Welcome to the Personal Computer Show. Today is Wednesday, June the 10th, 2020. I'm Hank Key and my colleague is Joe King. Just a few words before we start the program. As we're coming out of the stay-at-home order, we thank the first responders, all of whom deserve our appreciation and admiration. That includes healthcare workers such as doctors and nurses, and also deserving of our gratitude are the police officers, emergency medical technicians, firefighters, and others who continue to respond to calls and medical emergencies. Do you know who has your personal data? Do you know how Facebook, Google, Amazon, and other big tech companies are using your personal data? Our website is pcradioshow.org. We are heard each Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on prn.fm, streaming on the Internet. Podcasts of the program is available on prn.fm, on the Internet, and to listen to the live program on the telephone each Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, the number is 641-793-7091. You can leave me a message with your question or comment at hank@pcradioshow.org. The Wall Street Journal published a very detailed article concluding that remote learning during the coronavirus stay-at-home for students didn't work. School districts involuntarily closed down in March in response to the coronavirus pandemic, and with practically no time at all for planning or training, launched remote learning to educate more than 50 million students from kindergarten through the 12th grade using technology. The problems began piling up almost immediately. There were students with no computers or internet access. Teachers had no experience with remote learning. Many students simply didn't show up online, and administrators had no way to determine the reason. Most districts weren't requiring students to do any work at all, increasing the risk that millions of students would have big gaps in their learning. Now, school administrators are looking ahead to an uncertain fall when many will be trying to apply lessons learned to reopen classrooms. Most likely, there will be a mix of in-person and remote learning. Students will need suitable electronic devices and internet access, and teachers will need much better training about how best to instruct them from a distance. Preliminary research suggests that students nationwide will return to school in the fall with roughly 70% of learning gains in reading relative to a typical school year, and less than 50% in math. It expects a greater learning loss for minority and low-income children who have less access to technology, and for families more affected by the economic downturn. The basic assumption by many is that students these days are tech-savvy. It's a tech-savvy generation that's growing up. However, that does not necessarily translate that they will do well with remote learning. Some education experts say that there's a huge gap between what students can do for fun on their cell phones and gaming systems and how good they are at using a device for educational tasks, such as reading a document, answering a question, or figuring out a problem. The assumption is that since they spend all their time on their devices, it's no big deal for them to learn remotely. But being a digital consumer and a digital learner are two different things. Remote learning isn't comparable to in-person teaching. Schools are now debating what they should do when school reopens. School districts didn't realize the number of students without access to devices and the internet until they surveyed parents. Schools that could afford to do so hurried to buy technology needed to get students online. Chromebooks were in short supply. Not everyone had internet access. Many schools prepared printed packets of work for students, but they didn't have online access. A major issue has been how to assess students fairly when learning is done remotely. Remote learning has turned the simple task of taking attendance into a challenge. Many count students as present if they log in to do work in programs like Google Classroom, an online classroom manager. Some give attendance credit for weekly progress on completed work. Some schools, particularly those with ample resources and some experience with remote learning, had a far easier time of it than most. Administrators at Riverdale Country School, a private school in New York City, said that their online learning was successful, thanks greatly in part to careful preparation and execution and having the resources to pull it off. The transition involved a month of infrastructure design and collaboration between administrators, teachers, and the school's technology team, students, and parents. Faculty and students participated in one-hour training sessions during the school day, and the school closed for 2 days before its spring break for a remote learning trial run. About 9.7 million students aren't connected to the internet, according to an estimate by Education Superhighway, a nonprofit focused on connectivity in public schools. Louisiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C. have the largest percentage of unconnected students, ranging from 26 to 28%, more than the national average of about 20%. New Hampshire, North Dakota, and Utah have the lowest percentage, ranging from 10 to 12%. New York City Department of Education will provide remedial instruction over the summer and possibly in the fall to thousands of students who have fallen behind during remote classes this spring. Officials expect about 177,000 of the school's 1.1 million public school students to enroll in remote summer learning, with about 102,000 of them required to take part. School superintendents differ on how to reopen schools in the fall using social distancing practices. Many are contemplating a hybrid system of splitting up classes and rotating students in and out of classrooms, with some reporting to the school on some days while the others work remotely. Another strategy being explored is to have younger students who can't be home alone in classrooms every day while older students learn at home. To keep everyone safe, districts are considering new rules such as requiring students and teachers to wear masks, having students eat lunch in classrooms, and requiring them to attend school in person only 2 days a week. Other possibilities include prohibiting the sharing of school supplies and the spacing of desks closer than 6 feet apart, and limiting parents and other visitors on school sites. It's going to require a lot of work to get the students back up to speed. It's becoming clear that the coronavirus pandemic, shifting many to work at home, is not temporary, but it will become permanent for many people. Things will never be the same again. For example, a U.S. Census Bureau survey reveals that 1/3 of all American workers and half of so-called information workers are able to work from home, and that 98% of them would like the option of working from home for the rest of their career. Nearly 2/3 of candidates say that whether a company offers alternative work locations, home or office, is a key consideration when choosing a job. On the other side of the equation, companies are managing to save about $11,000 annually for every employee who works from home, approximately half the time. For employees, the change translates into savings of between $2,500 to $4,000 annually if they work from home half the time, and even more if they decide to move to less expensive areas or if they decide to work from home most of the time. In fact, Facebook, which claims that half of its workers could be working from home in the next 5 to 10 years, says it will adjust salaries for those who decide to move to areas where the cost of living is lower. Meanwhile, Google has just announced it will allow employees whose work does not require their presence at the Googleplex to continue working from home if they wish, and will give them $1,000 towards the cost of buying computers, additional monitors, cameras, or office furniture. Google says as of July 6, the company will acquire more buildings so as to offer alternatives for those who need or simply wants to return to the office, so that if capacity permits, they can be used on a limited and rotating basis. It is calculated around 1 day every 2 weeks, which would mean an occupation of approximately 10%. This is a sea change for a company that has always preferred its workers to be office-based, of course with few exceptions. We are in the process of moving from working from home because there is an emergency to working from home because, well, people can now make the necessary arrangements to make it comfortable, and because they can now enjoy the benefits of an office when they want to. A growing number of companies have already offered their employees the possibility of not returning to the office if they don't want to, and there's even talk of possible exodus from Silicon Valley, as the people who gentrified to the San Francisco Bay Area now look for better properties at more reasonable prices, a move that would also improve factors such as traffic or air quality. This trend towards working from home may take longer in other industries and cultures, but in the end, trends are trends, and this is one that makes sense. How to promote your career when you work from home. Working from home, being remote, should not be a disadvantage come promotion time. You still need to manage your career to be promotion worthy and to get noticed. With everyone working remotely, and probably including your boss, you need a strategy to be visible with the decision makers and influencers of promotion decisions. Here are a couple of things that you can do to proactively promote your career even when you work from home. Check in frequently. The cliche, out of sight, out of mind, could very well apply to a relationship between you and your manager. You may have had a great relationship when you worked in close proximity, and you still may have a great relationship, but don't assume it. Check in periodically. Your manager may not know how to manage remotely. Communicating with and collaborating with a dispersed team is different than managing a team all in one place, and your manager may not realize this. In addition, the pandemic, slowing economy, and volatile political landscape add additional challenges. So even if your manager's fine with the remote curveball, you'll need to check in more frequently than before. Summarize the results of your work week. Many companies are trying to contain or even reduce costs, so leaders are questioning every resource, including their employee count. Do not assume your manager knows everything you're working on. Checking in more frequently. In addition, regularly report your results. Your report can be a simple email to summarize what you have accomplished for the week, or can be an update on the status of each of your projects. Ask your manager what format and frequency they would prefer. If they say they don't need a report, send one anyway as a recap of the work summary at the end of each week. At the very least, you'll have a written account for your next performance review. Align yourself with the company mission and priorities, which may have changed. Getting results projects may no longer have budget, while some may leapfrog to the top of the list because the new market conditions make them more relevant. Being flexible is critical during unpredictable and changing times. Your day-to-day responsibilities may look very different, and you may be asked to take on additional work or what feels like a whole new role. By aligning where the urgent work is, you stay busy, where the need is greatest, and hopefully where senior leaders are watching closely. Be alert to possible next steps. With roles and responsibilities shifting, what next steps are available? If you had a promotion strategy mapped out before the pandemic, check with your mentor and or your manager to see if that is still a viable plan, and if the company strategy veers away from an area that you were interested in, that may not be the best move right now. On the other hand, if the company is making new moves in response to the pandemic, slowing economy, and other market conditions, these could present opportunities you hadn't considered before. And always stay upbeat. Unpredictable times are anxious times, and your manager and their manager are not insulated from the anxiety. If you're grounded and upbeat, that adds value. It also enhances your executive presence since you exude confidence. Speak up if you have a different idea or point of view. However, make sure that you're offering solutions and just not complaining about what's wrong. Maintain and nurture your connections outside of your immediate group within the company. Your manager and immediate department are not the only decision makers or influencers in promotions. While everyone works remotely, you won't have opportunities to interact with people in the same operating unit. This includes taking an inventory of who you already know but need to reconnect with and who you don't already know and need introductions. If your company has continued town halls or other company-wide events virtually, take advantage of those opportunities to virtually bump into people that you would otherwise not reach. Maintain and nurture your connections outside the company. Your current employer is only one place to promote your career. Given the market uncertainty, the most proactive promotion plan should include options outside your current employer. Prioritize connecting with your broader network outside your company so that you hear about what is available elsewhere. At the very least, you have a better understanding of how other companies are handling the current market challenges, and this may give you ideas even if you stay where you are. When are promotion decisions made? Who are the decision makers? What backgrounds and track records typically get promoted for what types of roles? Even as you focus on what you can do to improve your prospects, don't forget that your company has a promotion process in place. You need to know what that is and work within that system to make sure you focus on the right things with the right people at the right time. There's an old saying, those who succeed happen to be in the right place at the right time. The ongoing global pandemic is causing deep reflection about what this will mean for how our society is going to function. We have seen working from home skyrocket to nearly 30% of Americans. Public transportation and traffic in major cities decreased dramatically as offices, factories, and schools have shut down. In Europe and China, satellite images are showing lower levels of pollution as a result. If we wanted an experiment to see what the future of work would look like, well, this is the time to look at it. Many of us have used Zoom and Slack and adapted to our home and work lives, coming into greater contact with one another. But as we look further out to the point when the immediate crisis subsides and we see the long-lasting effects on our lives, what could this mean to how our society functions, and how might our living and work environment evolve as a result? About 5 years ago, remote working on this scale across multiple industries would have seemed unfeasible. That signifies a huge shift that has taken place, both in terms of technology, with cloud computing, apps, remote and working tools, but also infrastructure, including faster Wi-Fi and phone data. Internet providers currently appear to be coping with the increased and shifting demand as people work from home. However, the rollout of 5G has arguably become even more paramount for these companies. It will increase connectivity, particularly in remote or underserved areas, and provide the necessary infrastructure for the Internet of Things in a more decentralized society. When the immediate crisis subsides, it seems likely that there will be a lasting impact on work habits. More people will feel that they can be successfully working from home and may negotiate for it as a benefit with their employers, particularly if wages stagnate in a recession. Employers, for their part, will realize that cutting costs on office space outweighs any challenges to productivity, and that may sustain an increase in remote working tools such as Zoom and Slack, although no doubt there will still be a return to old working practices in many companies who don't have the option to work remotely. What is clear is that we will need flexibility in our technology and infrastructure to cope with a change in demand from diverging work practices between remote workers and commuters. That will likely bring new innovations and solutions across commercial real estate, education, information technology, human resources, telecommunication, and energy. And if more activities need to be done remotely, then we can expect to see greater demand for smart city infrastructure. Social monitoring technologies, including cameras, drones, and security systems, will become more pervasive. Both as footfall decreases in certain areas, it will create more security risk for businesses who want to protect their premises. We may also see authorities use this technology in future health emergencies. In the United Kingdom, local police have already been using drones to enforce social distancing. A more permanent response could see the use of sensors with data analytics to monitor foot traffic in certain areas, such as shopping districts, and warn people if crowds are too dense. It will take a long time for society to adapt to these measures, and there is an inherent and understandable distrust of governments monitoring its citizens, and public groups have already opposed smart city projects where data monitoring is used. However, the use of drones and sensors to monitor infrastructures will be more widely accepted as a way to reduce the need for essential maintenance workers to go outside, both during health emergencies but also in extreme weather events which are likely to become more common. Rather than have to go on site to check an out-of-service telecom pole, for instance, a worker will be able to check what the issue is from their smartphone and possibly even fix it remotely. With fewer people commuting to work and visiting urban areas for shopping, restaurants and leisure, and some of these services switch to online or delivery, we may see a permanent shift in demand for transport. If vehicle traffic is reduced in city centers, that will leave more room for green highways, cycle paths, and pedestrian routes that will enable people to move around the city and get exercise while still maintaining a reasonable distance from each other. For municipalities and governments, that will affect urban planning, including changing road layouts, widening sidewalks, providing more alternative transport options in collaboration with private companies, and improving street lighting. Providers of mass transit, that's trains and subway companies in particular, may be expected to reduce overcrowding and create more distance between passengers, although it is hard to see how these measures will be effectively implemented. In all likelihood, demand for mass transit will grow if fewer people have reason to own a car for commuting and instead can rely on car services or rentals for occasional trips. If anything, the coronavirus pandemic has underscored the importance of listening to the experts and scientists. The biggest threat facing society is climate change. In a survey of 800 of the world's political and business leaders by the World Economic Forum in January of 2020, climate action failure, biodiversity loss, and extreme weather topped the list of risks in terms of likelihood and impact. Now, with all these changes, there is an opportunity to change human behavior and implement clean technology solutions that will make these effects more permanent. You've already seen the powerful effect that reducing traffic and industrial activity has had on air pollution levels in a relatively short space of time. We would also need to see a worldwide economic impetus for the adoption of clean tech, including hydrogen-fueled transport, electric vehicles, renewable energy, carbon capture, and storage and cleaner fuels across industries. In doing this, we will have the chance to change our course before the effects become unmanageable. Presenting Benjamin Rockwell with his IT Pro series, Setting Boundaries When Working Remote.
This is Benjamin Rockwell, and now it's time to get to business. This is where I give you my various amount of tidbits. This is my current and past experience of being an IT professional. I've been in the business now for 30 years. And some of what I'm going to cover right now is not so much technology as it is working, as it is dealing with the day-to-day life. And some of these things you may have heard from me, and some of these may be brand new. So I'm going to go through the biggest issues, and that is what we are dealing with. If you are working via remote, I want you to know that there are some tips that are there for you, and I want to encapsulate these all in one spot. First and foremost, we have merged the office and home. And we have done it in such a way that, there are going to be throughout our various lives, and maybe this is something that's going to be easing up. Maybe this is something that's going to come back again. We don't know. We cannot predict the future. And hopefully you've overcome this first one. And that is kids and family will happen. If you are an employee, understand that your boss is understanding of this. They hopefully have a family. They have a family life. They understand that things are going to be a little bit crazy. If you're a boss and you don't have a family, if you were hatched alone from an egg and just presented into the office as a fully grown adult, I have no idea. My mind goes in weird places at times. Please do remember, the kids are going to happen. Kids are unpredictable. There are so many different TV shows that are based off of kids will say the craziest things. So, yeah. If you're an employee, if you're a boss, I want you to start the day right by getting dressed as you would for the office. And this goes all the way throughout your business day. Do not show up. I will grant you one thing. Those little fuzzy slippers, I've got like little bear paw slippers. I wear those. They keep my feet nice and toasty. They're comfy and they're relaxing. I skip on the shoes. That's it. The rest of me is all dressed up the exact same way that I go to the office. And the reason for this, yes, I could be called upon to turn on my webcam at any moment. It hasn't happened yet. I have had many web conferences. None of them involved my being on camera. And that's okay. But it gets you into that right frame of mind. It gets you into a work attitude. It makes sure that you understand, that the world understands that you are at work. You're continuing your professionalism as if little has happened in the world. Yes, I know a lot has happened. Our minds are a little bit distracted, but bear with me here. I do want you to, just as you do in the office, set a schedule, establish your availability, and establish your hours. This is something that is so important. You want to accomplish a number of things throughout the day. You want to accomplish the things that need to happen to keep your job, to keep your department going, to keep the company going. So we put it all together, and you gotta, this is, of all times, this is a time to really buckle down and make sure you are, whatever form you're utilizing, you're setting your tasks and you're accomplishing them. You're making goals for the day, for the week, for the month, for the morning, for the afternoon, and you're keeping them, or keeping most of them, and you're readjusting to all of these priorities to make sure things get done. If you take a lunch break, if you take a break, we most all of us do take a lunch. You take a morning break, you take an afternoon break. Maybe it's just a water cooler thing. You know, you spend 10 minutes chatting with somebody for over something that's outside of it. Yeah, I want you to keep that up. Utilize whatever chat tool you guys are using, whether it's Skype or Slack or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Utilize that for just a few minutes in the morning, in the afternoon. Make sure you're getting your cup of tea. I drink tea. Many people drink coffee. Whatever it is, keep the standard practice. Whatever you did at the office, do it at home. As far as breaks, as far as staying hydrated. As a matter of fact, right now, maybe even is a better time for you to start focusing on hydration. You've got a nice water filter at home, your Brita. Let's use that. Make sure you take those breaks at a regular time. Make sure you take your lunch at a regular time. I also want you to keep your office neat and presentable. If you go on webcam, you go on to a Skype or a Zoom or whatever it is, WebEx, and people are seeing your office, they should see something that's professional. And if it's professional, if your office area is professional, you are also going to think of work as professional. And that really it leads into, I want you to have a separate space for it, but that's another story. Most of all, just as I'm coming to the end of the segment, I want you to also realize, be aware when you are coming to the end of your normal work day, and I want you to end your day. I want you to separate it. I want you to be apart from it, because now you have to go and do the other part of life, which is remember why you're working so hard. Go spend time with the family. Spend time hugging your loved ones, playing games with them, and just enjoy being with them. This is Benjamin Rockwell. Back to you, Hank.
Thank you, Benjamin. It wasn't that long ago that computer media was predicting the death of the personal computer and it being replaced by the smartphone. Evidence was the dropping sales of computer systems. The smartphone platform may be a computing Swiss knife, but it augments the personal computer. It does not replace it. There are different functions that each do well. For me, the smartphone is most suited to function as a cell phone, of course, and as a navigational GPS in that form factor. But when it comes to extensive use of the keyboard functions and the need for a larger screen, the personal computer is more suitable. This was recently evidenced by the need for many schools needing to buy Chromebooks to support students for online study at home as they only had the use of a smartphone. One size does not fit all. Form follows function. Back about the year 2000, it was relatively easy to upgrade the personal computer. You can change the clocking of the CPU and pick up anywhere from 5 to 12% in performance. If that was not enough, replace the CPU. If you started to run short of storage, swap out the hard disk drive, and that was a simple process. Now many are just swapping out the hard disk drive with a solid-state drive for better performance. With the upgrade in the Windows operating system, just adding more RAM memory greatly improves performance. It is not uncommon that there are many systems 10 to 15 years old that are still able to run Windows 10. Now, laptops are becoming less upgradable. More laptops today are sold with soldered-on components than ever before. Is soldered RAM bad? The main disadvantage is that you can't upgrade it in the future, nor can it be replaced if there is memory failure. If the RAM fails, the whole computer system is kaput. If the manual tells you that the memory or storage drive you want to remove are soldered onto the motherboard, there's no upgrade possible. Also, if you have to break through anything that's held together by glue or have to remove the entire motherboard, forget about it. Why do laptop manufacturers solder RAM onto the motherboard? Is their purpose to cut costs and make laptops slimmer? Or do they have a different motive of making a greater profit? For the manufacturer, it is essential that they minimize cost. Every penny and big connector, like a RAM connector, is a liability. Also, inserting the RAM module takes a human several seconds to do that. Removable chips require slots or mounts that would make the device thicker. User upgradability works against the manufacturer's bottom line. How could they upsell you a different new product? Yes, it can be to cut costs and save room or make room for other parts. However, eliminating the socket increases reliability as well as eliminate returns and warranty claims, supposedly. The same thing applies to built-in rechargeable batteries as well. If you look at most smartphones, their main memory and batteries are not made to be replaceable for exactly those reasons. Why is Lenovo soldering the RAM onto the system board on its new ThinkPads instead of using a socket? Planned obsolescence when you can't upgrade. Now laptops are being more than a computer unit as it is a style status. Having a slim, pretty, much-powered system has its own benefits and downsides. Cost-cutting is obvious choice as they will shove all equipment and seal it for usage. As technology is getting more advanced, things like system on a chip, it's very efficient in its class, so different system, different architecture, and different status. Any connector is a source of problems, especially in machines designed to be carried around. Laptops are a conscious choice of portability instead of expandability. Socketing components that don't have to be socketed is, to me, a neither one thing nor the other compromise that produces an inferior product. Laptops are now seen as having a shorter life than desktops and having less flexibility. Manufacturers save costs by avoiding implementing slots or sockets for external modules and their connections. The BIOS becomes simpler as you don't need to look for RAM configurations and timings, and you also save costs by accelerating production times. For the second part, yes, you shave off a couple millimeters, but it only counts if you don't have a 2.5-inch bay for a drive and only use M2 format ones. Even then, it won't count for so much, as an M2 drive with its connector won't be much slimmer than a SODIMM memory connection would be. Frequent purchases instead of upgrades. Consumer now have to buy new models more frequently since upgrading is no longer an option. And yes, there is an added benefit that soldered RAM encourages people to buy new laptops since they can't upgrade. At the beginning of each weekly program, I ask, do you know who has your personal data and how they are using it? Big tech has been invading our privacy. In the web browser market, Google Chrome has the giant share with over 68% of the market. This is followed by Firefox with 8%, Microsoft Edge with 6.7%, Microsoft Internet Explorer with 6.38%, Safari with 3.71%, and Opera trailing with 1.31%. Last November, a new browser was released with great fanfare. Brave 1.0 is a free and open-source web browser developed by Brave Software Inc., based on the Chromium web browser. As of 2019, Brave has been released for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Android, and iOS. Brave currently has 8.7 million monthly active users and over 300,000 verified publishers. Brave Software was co-founded by Brendan Eich, creator of JavaScript and co-founder of Mozilla Firefox, and Brian Bondi, formerly of Khan Academy and Mozilla. The list of backers have very impressive credentials. A review by CNET gave it a glowing review. Brave attempts to strike a balance between user privacy from advertising trackers and the ad-based revenue that websites rely on. Brave's pitch is that users who want to support websites with revenue while still shielding their privacy can opt into Brave Rewards. Brave claims a 3 to 6 times faster browsing experience than others on the market. Brave Speed is a suite of security and privacy features. On its website, Brave claims that their browser fights malware and prevents tracking, keeping your information safe and secure. It is free. Then, what is their business model? It is the feature offered by Brave that attempts to strike a balance between user privacy from advertising trackers and the ad-based revenue that websites rely on. Brave's pitch is that users who want to support websites with revenue while still shielding their privacy can opt into Brave Rewards. Brave swap ads on a website with ads of its own, shown as operating system notification that don't track you. If you view what Braves call its privacy-respecting ads or engage with them, you're not generating revenue for a publisher as you normally would with other browsers. Instead, you earn Brave's basic attention tokens, which they call BAT, B-A-T, a kind of cryptocurrency that can turn into real dollars. Brave Browser is a commercial product first and a privacy-centric web browser second. While the browser does have quite a few improvements to privacy compared to Chrome, it's designed to promote the use of cryptocurrency that Brave itself owns, and it has a referral program that pays browser users by how many people they can get to download Brave. Now the browser has been caught injecting its own affiliate codes into web addresses for popular cryptocurrency trading websites. The issue came to widespread attention when a Twitter user pointed out that Brave Browser auto-filled a referral code to the end of the web address and is typed into the address bar. Binance, that's B-I-N-A-N-C-E, is a cryptocurrency trading website, and with that referral code, Brave Software could earn 20% from trading fees for every account created using the link. As it turns out, Binance isn't the only website Brave is injecting its own referral links into. The browser's GitHub repository reveals the functionality was first added March the 25th, and the current list of sites include Binance, Coinbase, Ledger, and Trezor. Brave Software receives a kickback for purchases by accounts made with those services. For example, Coinbase says that when you refer a new customer to the service, you can earn 50% of their fees for the first 3 months. The nature of these affiliate programs also allow the referrer, in this case Brave Software, to view some amount of data about the customers who sign up with a code. Coinbase's program provides direct access to your campaign's performance data, while Trezor offers a detailed overview of purchases. Brave Software co-founder and CEO Brendan Eich said on Twitter that he didn't believe there was anything wrong with injecting affiliate codes into web addresses. Well, there's nothing inherently wrong with affiliate codes for businesses, as they can provide publishers and content creators a way to earn revenue without relying strictly on ads by driving traffic to a product or service. Brave isn't sending any people to these sites itself. It's simply hijacking organic data by embedding its own affiliate code. However, it seems that the backlash is working out, as Brave developers are introducing a toggle, and its functionality will be to disable by default starting with the next stable release, whenever that comes. And if you want a browser that is actually private and secure, use Firefox or Chromium with your choice of privacy extensions. And one way of getting around Brave's intrusion is don't use it. Presenting Marty Winston with his All Hands on Tech. Air Conditioner Basics.
Before I get started, you should know about a goof-up in last week's segment on UVC. One that's fraught with irony, given that the upcoming segment, the one you're about to hear, is all about air conditioning. I had suggested that those long UVC rod lights from UVC Power be placed in the air handler to shine on the condenser coils while purifying the airflow. Well, that would be quite a trick, since the air handler is indoors and the condenser is outdoors. It's not the condenser coils, but the evaporator coils that are inside the air handler, and it's those that the UVC will help to keep clean. One more note, it's unlikely that even shiny coils will reflect and spread the UVC. UVC effectiveness is strictly line of sight from source to target. I know these corrections probably have no consequence for you, but accuracy is important. Anyway, let's chill and get into how air conditioning works. Okay, air conditioning is important, especially when the weather calls for it. Have you noticed that it hasn't snowed lately? For a lot of homeowners, that starts the countdown to the moment of discovery that the air conditioner isn't blowing cold air anymore. So you make the call. Maybe the refrigerant recharge gets quoted as, maybe $150, but by the time they add in the other fees, you might end up bleeding $400 or more. A lot of people believe that the coils in their heat pump or air conditioner are designed to fail to help keep the HVAC service and repair industry in business. Most involve direct contact between dissimilar metals, which causes electrolytic corrosion, which leads to leaks. So maybe that's true, but whatever a lot of people believe, not a lot of people understand the basics of how an air conditioner works. So stick around and you can pick up on the basics. By the way, there are a lot of similarities between air conditioners and heat pumps. Air conditioners are slightly simpler, so we'll start there. As you might guess, an air conditioner works a lot like a refrigerator, with thin tubing circulating a refrigerant through a closed loop. At different points along that loop, the refrigerant is sometimes a liquid and sometimes a gas, sometimes a hot vapor, sometimes warm, sometimes cool, sometimes chilly cold. Think about a baseball diamond with its 4 bases. The names of our 4 bases are compressor, condenser, expander, and evaporator. Compressor, condenser, expander, and evaporator. Details on these are just a minute or so away. Whole house air conditioners tend to have a big cubic housing outdoors and a big metal enclosure indoors. The indoor unit is blowing cold air into the ventilation ducts. The outdoor unit blows hot air into into the air. And listen, if your air conditioner is running, place your hand above that big cube outdoors, and if you don't feel hot air blowing, Or if the air that's blowing is only slightly warm, that's a sign of trouble. Probably one of those unfortunately costly refrigerant recharge events. The outdoor unit and the indoor unit both have big fans. You know that because you can hear them, and at one place or another, feel them blow. If you've ever looked inside, you'll also see loops of copper tubing embedded into arrays of cooling fins. For those of you who've ever built your own PCs, these are very much like the fins and fans of a CPU cooler, only bigger. For that matter, they're also very much like fins and fans on car radiators. All of these devices fall into the category of heat exchangers, and specifically, all of these devices are about transferring heat between ambient air and, well, if it's a CPU cooler, it's solid metal rods. If it's a car radiator, it's the water and antifreeze circulating through the engine block. And if it's an air conditioner, it's that refrigerant fluid in the loop tubing. Back to air conditioning and our baseball metaphor. That looped tubing is the baseline. Let's put the compressor at home plate, but to be fair, it's more like running laps than like running bases. The compressor is a specialized pump that's located in the outside unit, that big cube. It pulls in refrigerant from the inside unit. That's a gas at that point that's tepid to lukewarm. The compressor puts that gas under pressure, which turns it into a superheated vapor. The pumping action of the compressor pushes that hot gas through the outside unit's loops of tubing and fins. The outside unit's loops are called the condenser. The fins and the fan out there move heat from the refrigerant into the outside air, as you can feel if you hold your hand over the thing. Or to put it another way, it cools the refrigerant enough to get it to condense from being a hot gas into being a warm liquid. So the compressor is at home plate, the fins and fans of the condenser are at first base. From there, the tubing runs back indoors and a critical change at second base. Remember how compressing the refrigerant made it get hot? Want to guess what happens when you let it expand? The second base is an expansion valve, where the refrigerant comes through a tiny pinhole entry and into a larger chamber. You guessed it. That turns the refrigerant from warm to chilly cold. So it's cold refrigerant liquid that runs from second base to third, where we find another set of fins and fans. It's the evaporator. That chilly cold refrigerant is making those fins cold too. The evaporator is inside that big air handler chamber, the blower box of the indoor unit. It's usually shaped like a wide upside-down V. The fan for the evaporator is the main ventilation fan for the house, and it's drawing room temperature air from everywhere in the house through the return air ducting and blowing it across the evaporator's chilly fins. That chills the blown air as it passes, and it's that chilled air that cools the house. Of course, that also slightly warms the refrigerant as it leaves the evaporator, now just cool instead of cold. That refrigerant is on the way from third base back to home plate, being pulled there by the compressor. So the outside unit has a compressor that heats and pressurizes the refrigerant and a condenser that cools the refrigerant and sends it indoors. The indoor unit has the expansion valve that chills the refrigerant and the evaporator that warms the refrigerant as its chill is moved into the ventilation systems, into those air ducts. During hot weather, a heat pump works exactly the same way. The difference is that in cold weather, a heat pump can make it all run backwards to blow cold air out that outdoor unit and get warm air to blow through your ventilation system. You may have a split system. A split system may have more complicated paths, but it, too, deals with all the same elements. Those elements, one more time, in sequence, are the compressor, the condenser, the expansion valve, and the evaporator, all dealing with refrigerant in a copper tube. Two of these, the condenser and the evaporator, involve large fans. Of course, you may have more than just these elements involved with your own HVAC system. You might also be addressing humidity. An air conditioner, the air conditioner in your whole house air conditioning, that air conditioner is usually effective enough as a dehumidifier that you don't need to add to it. But then there's the low humidity winter months when adding a central humidifier can help boost the moisture content in all of the air in the house. Steam humidifiers seem to work the best, but you may decide to consider other choices. Similarly, whole house electrostatic air cleaners installed in the ventilation ducts at the air handler are a significant help in reducing dust and allergens without reducing ventilation airflow. Beyond that, hard ultraviolet UVC sanitizers in the ductwork can kill microorganisms, including most that are responsible for bacterial, viral, or fungal infections and diseases. Go for something with a lot of output, a lot of intensity, or you won't have enough exposure to really chop down those microorganisms. If you're interested in helping your system run longer between those costly repair calls, there are some simple things you can do. Outdoors, use a brush and a hose, make it a pressure washer if you have one, to make sure the fence surrounding that big cube stay clean, just metal to air with nothing in between. Indoors, change your filters often, and if there's nobody in your house with allergies, don't buy HEPA. A fairly low MERV rating creates less resistance to airflow, so more heating or cooling can happen per minute. Your system will be effective with shorter runs. You'll save energy, and there will be less wear and tear or aging on your system. And those filters, those lesser filters, are a lot less expensive. MERV 6 is fine for most people. Are we cool now? Next time, catch some last-minute shopping advice in Doodads for Dads, just in case he doesn't need yet another coffee cup.
Thank you, Marty. Public service announcements. Computer club meetings in the New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut tri-state region have canceled their general monthly meetings during the stay-at-home order. But now that the stay-at-home order is being relaxed, some of the clubs have been meeting through teleconferencing. For updated information, visit the website of the computer club or go to pcradioshow.org to get their URL address. The New York Amateur Computer Club will have a virtual club meeting Thursday, June the 11th at 7 p.m., and they'll be using Zoom. And it'll be an open forum meeting, and the topic is remote working from home. And for more detailed information, visit the website nyacc.org. Our website is pcradioshow.org. We are heard each Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on prn.fm, streaming on the Internet. Podcasts of the program is available on prn.fm on the Internet. If you have any questions for us, just send us an email addressed to hank@pcradioshow.org. Just a reminder, wherever you are, we come together at 7 p.m. each day to give thanks and gratitude to the medical staff and essential workers. Ring a bell or make a joyful sound to show your appreciation to all those working on the front lines. In the meantime, stay in touch and remember to do your regular backups. I'm Hank Key, and on behalf of Joe King, Michael Horowitz, Marty Winston, and Benjamin Rockwell, we thank you for listening. Stay safe and healthy until we meet again, same time, same station next week.